Afghanistan.
Soldiers can't differentiate between a mission where they're going to deliver firewood or a mission where they're going to go after a known enemy, Taliban. They have to be able to fight on either mission.
A mission that has already proven deadly. Today on News and Review, Afghan fighting, Canadians under attack. Hello, I'm Carla Robinson. Canada is in command of a dangerous mission in Afghanistan. It's a serious shift for the country, a big turn away from traditional peacekeeping. This is a combat operation, Canada's first since the Korean conflict back in the 1950s, and Canadians were warned there would be deaths. The bodies of 4 young Canadian soldiers being sent home. The soldiers were ambushed by a roadside bomb. Hundreds of their comrades standing in tribute at the airfield in Kandahar. This is the main base for the international forces in southern Afghanistan, and these soldiers have done this before.
Make sure you're looking down.
About 1,800 Canadians are based here. Their new mission is dangerous, a deadly fact that was driven home right at the outset.
It was a tough week, our first week here, but yes, I think we are here for a reason, and if our government feels strongly that we are capable of doing that, then yes, that's what we're here for.
We don't make a commitment and then run away at the first sign of trouble. We don't, and we will not, as long as I'm leading this country.
Stephen Harper made Afghanistan one of his first stops as Prime Minister, a clear sign of how important this is for his government, a clear indication of how he sees Canada's role in the world.
Working with the Afghan government and the Afghan people to enhance their security helps them. It allows them to rebuild their country, to make a better life for themselves and for their children.
Rebuilding the country and enhancing security for the Afghan people. It's a two-pronged mission, and it's controversial. CBC correspondent Carol Off explains why.
Princess Patricia's getting ready to head out.
You're in 39er, sir.
For many of them, it's their first foray into the country that they must help to secure. But first, the soldiers of A Company need an introduction. Americans will provide it.
All right, we're going to come up out of checkpoint 2, out of gate 3. We'll lock and load as soon as we get an aces green.
The U.S. military has been involved in an aggressive, often violent mission here. There can be no doubt that what Canada has inherited from the Americans is extremely dangerous.
Priority. All right, if it's an unblocked ambush, we're going to try to push through. As you're going through the kill zone, you're going to push and suppress the enemy.
Sergeant Dwayne Thier has done peacekeeping before, but like all the other soldiers here, he knows this is a different kind of mission, where Canadians are finding themselves in lethal fights.
That's a side effect of war, yes, is killing. We hope that that we go out there, that we don't have to, but if they want to bring it on, we'll make sure it's one-sided.
This is definitely not peacekeeping, but it's not war or occupation either. This is a complex new type of mission where Canadian soldiers might be asked to fight, even to kill on one day, and to win the hearts and minds of Afghan people the next.
Clear.
The rules of engagement here are not just defensive, but unlike peacekeeping, they're also offensive. Canada can strike first in this war against the Taliban, but the soldiers also have to work closely with the Afghans and to make friends.
I want your men to go out there and be police and find out, who are the Talibs, who's supporting the Talibs, how are they getting in there? I don't want us to be asking you.
American Lieutenant Colonel Bertrand Jess has made a lot of contacts during his time here.
But yeah, he's the commander, so he'll continue to work with you.
He introduces his successor, Canadian Lieutenant Colonel Ian Hope.
We want to build on the excellent relationship that you have with Colonel Jess and his soldiers.
Major Kirk Gallinger, commander of A Company, will hold the line in this district.
Here's the coalition forces, here are the Afghans. And you, Qayyum, Chief Cooter, you're going forward with your force, taking the lead.
The Americans have been trying to create a united front out of various militia leaders to get them to do the bidding of Washington's Operation Enduring Freedom.
But the biggest thing is we don't need to have you fighting with Shuriga.
The next stop on this Get to Know the Locals road trip is to meet Sharaga. The Americans have subcontracted his private militia to provide security for road construction. It's to be an important meeting, but it doesn't take place.
Oh, really? Really? Yes. Where?
Local people tell the Canadians there's been an attack on Sharaga.
Regrettably, we've received reports that he was wounded in some type of attack today, and I understand that right now he's in the hospital in Kandahar.
We went to find Sharaga in Kandahar's military hospital, surrounded by his men, former Mujahideen warriors. Sharaga is wounded in 4 places. A bomb with a tripwire blew up when he opened his door. Sharaga is a hired gun with an armed detail of 200 men. Afghans consider such militia leaders to be warlords. The Americans call them auxiliary police. They have to register with local leaders. Their pay has been coming from Washington.
We agreed to a contract that the Americans would look after security inside the camp, and we would look after security outside and on the roads.
The Canadian military has come to Kandahar prepared to fight, but just as keenly to assist this very needful society. Canada's job is to help defeat Afghanistan's enemies, but the Canadian goal is to help rebuild Kandahar as well. It's a complex double mission, and aid agencies are worried about it. VARA is an NGO that distributes seeds and fruit trees to farmers who are trying to resuscitate agriculture in Kandahar province. Abdul Salam Siddiqui believes that the Canadian soldiers will create problems if they're both fighting and helping to distribute aid.
Afghan people, they are not habits to see the military people implementing the projects and coming to their villages and to their origin places to implement the projects.
Siddiqui says local NGOs have been attacked by Taliban forces after American troops visited their offices. He doesn't think it will be safer with Canadian soldiers.
That every foreigner, Afghan people, they are thinking that these are Americans.
Canadian soldiers are getting to know their terrain. The sand of Kandahar becomes thick muck when it rains. These new howitzer guns are part of the robust arsenal that Canada has for the mission.
Everybody on that gun!
The soldiers spent the night in this field, unable to drive the remaining 6 kilometers to the platoon house. That house fended off an attack during the night of rocket-propelled grenades. Soldiers fired the howitzers much of the night, along with illumination rounds, but they could do little against an attack on foot.
2 RPG rockets were fired at the house. We responded with small arms fire. We gave chase from the house, and from this artillery gun position, we fired in support with illumination rounds. That may not be a classic World War II battle, but it is a fight.
Colonel Hope and his men are very conscious of Canadian opinion about this mission. Canada's love affair with its peacekeeping image is challenged by the demands of an operation that's unlike anything the forces have done before.
Soldiers can't differentiate between a mission where they're going to deliver firewood or a mission where they're going to go after a known enemy, Taliban. They have to be able to fight on either mission. That's going to be the hardest emotionally for them. Having to sit one day in Shura with local village elders, talk about reconstruction projects, delivering wood or humanitarian supplies, seeing the children go to schools that were just rebuilt, talking with those children, and then the next day potentially being in the mountains chasing down a Taliban leader who we know has done IED attacks or rocket attacks against us. That'll cause emotional ups and downs for the soldiers.
The mission is for 18 months, but no one is yet sure ultimately how long Canada will be here in southern Afghanistan, or if it's possible to do battle one day and to win hearts and minds the next. For The National, I'm Carol Off in Kandahar.
The Taliban were driven out of power after the 9/11 attacks in 2001. Osama bin Laden, the man behind the attacks on the U.S., had set up training camps in Afghanistan. It was the home base for his war on the West. Now, though, the Taliban are trying to fight back. They've targeted anyone associated with the Afghan government or the foreign forces. They've even attacked schools just because girls were being taught. And they've been using tactics honed with lethal consequences in Iraq: suicide bombings and ambushes with IEDs, improvised explosive devices. 16 Canadians were killed in just 2 months. Canadian Brigadier General David Fraser commands the multinational force in Kandahar.
You know, I went down to the hospital every time that somebody was hurt, and I walked in there and I looked at the soldiers, and some pretty horrific wounds that they've taken, and they put a smile on my face, of all things. You know, I go there to try to console them, and I walk away more committed than ever, because they're telling me, you know, going, hey, this was worth it. This is important.
Mullah Nakibullah is another important player in the city. He's a former commander of the Mujahideen, the Afghan forces that fought a Soviet occupation. He told the CBC's Peter Mansbridge that the vast majority of people in Afghanistan want the Canadians to help them rebuild. The mullah said the mission is important for Afghanistan and Canada.
که په افغانستان کې امنیت خو خامخا به یو څه خلک د بینه ځي دا خو داسې نه کېږي چې امنیت راځي سوله راځي دغه راځي په افغانستان کې چې امنیت راشي په ټوله دنیا کې امنیت راځي او ته افغانستان حکومت چې جوړ نه شي د افغانستان حکومت جوړ نه شي په ګرد دنیا کې به بې امنیتي وي.
There are actually 2 bases for the Canadians in Kandahar. A smaller group is working with what's called a Provincial Reconstruction Team, or PRT. CBC reporter Patrick Brown spent a day with those Canadians.
The Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry have their objectives surrounded.
Okay, so let's go up.
The target, a school on the outskirts of Kandahar. The mission, to hand out school bags.
There you go.
Abdul Aji says he isn't bothered by the arrival in school of a squad of soldiers, but he doesn't want to be one of them when he grows up. No, he says, I want to be a teacher. The soldiers belong to the Provincial Reconstruction Team, which supports efforts to improve everything from policing to medical care and, today, education.
Yeah, they're getting picky now.
Under her helmet, Lieutenant Gwen Burke wears a ready smile. But her work's become more difficult since Glyn Berry, a Canadian diplomat attached to the team, was killed by a suicide bomber.
Right now, we're having not problems, but just not enough resources, and it's hard to get out because of security and things like that.
Canadian soldiers are trying to defeat an insurgency and reach out to the population at the same time.
There's something of a contradiction in the 2 sides of the Canadian mission. It's really hard to win the hearts and minds of the people when you're wearing full body armor and carrying an automatic rifle.
We have to leave right now.
The soldiers keep these visits short and worry their presence may draw reprisals.
There always is a concern. But regardless of whether or not we travel here, all the schools are at risk.
Here, it's dangerous to offer a helping hand or to accept one. Patrick Brown, CBC News, Kandahar.
Dangerous and deadly. In the first 2 months of the new mission, 16 Canadians were killed. The price of peace and security in Afghanistan is steep indeed. And that's News in Review. I'm Carla Robinson. Thanks for watching. British Columbia.
We heard a crashing noise, and the ship went to one side.
A giant passenger ferry goes down.
And then it just went straight down and disappeared.
On News and Review today, on the rocks, a BC ferry sinks. Hello, I'm Carla Robinson. On the night of March 21st, 2006, a large passenger ferry was winding its way south off British Columbia's rugged coast. The Queen of the North, with 101 people on board, had left Prince Rupert several hours before. It was on an overnight trip to the town of Port Hardy. That's on the northern tip of Vancouver Island. The scenery is spectacular, but the waters can be treacherous. Ships must navigate through narrow channels along a rocky shoreline that twists and turns with hidden shoals beneath the surface. But as the Queen of the North sailed through the night, everything seemed normal. Many of the passengers were asleep. Then, shortly after midnight, disaster struck. The ship hit a rock and sank near the small fishing village of Hartley Bay. That's when what could have been a tragedy with many lives lost turned into a remarkable story of survival when the people of Hartley Bay came to the rescue. The CBC's Terry Malewski filed this first report.
The Queen of the North is gone. A huge passenger ferry vanished beneath the waters of BC's Inside Passage, leaving only an oil slick on the surface. Nobody knows why it went astray, but the passengers today found themselves steaming north on a Coast Guard ship heading back to Prince Rupert, where they started their nightmare voyage yesterday.
It was like 12:30. We heard a crashing noise, and the ship went to one side. And then it was a louder crash. And then none of the sirens went off right away. And then everybody realized what was happening, and then the sirens went off.
The ferry was off course and ran aground. Instantly, it took on water, and the Mayday call went out.
The neat part about it was all of a sudden all the lights went out on the boat and somebody yelled out, says, somebody put a spotlight on it. And at that time, the nose of the boat was sticking straight up in the air, and then it just went straight down and disappeared.
The crew got everyone into the lifeboats quickly, but this is a remote area and it was dark, cold and wet. There's only the tiny, impoverished Aboriginal community of Hartley Bay nearby. But the people of Hartley Bay went into action. Bruce Reese went straight to his boat and set out in the dark.
They were, I guess, socked, and I mean, a lot of them weren't even dressed for to evacuate the boat. Some of them didn't have coats and didn't have shoes, and some of them were wet.
Danny Danes was another who raced out onto the water to bring the passengers to shore.
While we're running in, I was watching where it was going. Those guys said, "Oh, look, it's gone down." So she went down. Then I heard from the passengers after that they said when she went down, they could hear all this crunching and noise going when it sunk. Like they figure it's all the cars banging together or something.
Of course, the people of Hartley Bay could have simply rolled over and gone back to sleep when they heard the Mayday call. But nobody here even seems to have considered that. Instead, just about everyone who had a boat used it immediately. They went out there, they picked up the shivering, shipwrecked passengers and brought them here to the local community center, gave them blankets and food and clothing, and did all of this really fast. The Coast Guard was still an hour away. Mona Danes organized the community to bring food and blankets. In an isolated place like this, she says people help each other.
One heart.
What do you mean by that?
We always say Saikulam God.
What does that
one
mean?
Heart. To just everybody just comes together and has the one heart to think of the other people, because one day it will happen to us too. And
in the end, an aging ferry was lost, and why that happened is not yet clear. But that the little town of Hartley Bay showed some heart, that is clear. Terry Malewski, CBC News, Hartley Bay, BC.
At first, it seemed that everyone had survived the sinking of the Queen of the North, but that was soon replaced by growing fears that 2 passengers had gone down with the ship. As investigators from the Transportation Safety Board arrived on the scene, there were also a lot of questions about how a ferry equipped with modern navigational aids could have been so off course. Here again is the CBC's Terry Malewski.
A huge oil slick continues to foul the waters near Hartley Bay. It's the diesel fuel still leaking from the sunken Queen of the North, littering the shoreline, life vests and other debris. But the worst news is this. Despite BC Ferry's initial claim that everyone was safe, there is still no sign of two missing passengers, Gerald Foisey and Shirley Rosette of 100 Mile House, BC. Foisey's brother, George, is losing hope.
They're on that frickin' boat. That's what I think now.
Their brother, one of the individuals, absolutely dropped them off at the ferry terminal. He believes they went on the boat. I don't have any reason to believe that they didn't. But again, I think, my suspicion today would be if we don't know that they're on Hartley Bay, if they're not there, they're not with the brother, then it's not good.
Hartley Bay is the tiny community where people raced out in the dark to rescue the passengers. But the RCMP and the Coast Guard only began searching there for the missing couple yesterday afternoon, 12 hours after the sinking and 7 hours after BC Ferries announced that all 101 passengers were fined. That claim went across the country, but it was wrong. Only 99 were picked up, and nobody realized the mistake until far too late. Foisey's brother tried to explain to his family.
But they didn't do the manifest of the names until they got on the Coast Guard boat, and that's when they realized that it was Gerald and Shirley.
But why wasn't it clear sooner that they were missing? The Transportation Safety Board would like to know.
That issue will certainly be a subject that is covered in our investigation and in our final report.
But the fundamental question remains why a ferry that has been working these waters for 25 years veered off course. The weather was not unusually bad, and BC Ferry says there should have been 3 officers on the bridge at all times with lots of equipment backing them up.
Your ferry, what you have is alarms that are generally controlled by the ship's officers. There was any number of different radars, GPS, electronic charting systems, everything.
So the mystery of what went wrong is only getting deeper now. How could the ferry have gone a kilometer off course with 3 people on the bridge and an array of automatic systems that should have warned them? Plus, the ship itself won't give up any answers soon. It has sunk way down deep, 200-300 meters of water that's too deep for human divers. So the answers will have to come from the crew themselves, and they are being questioned now very closely. Tony Malewski, CBC News, Prince Rupert.
As investigators questioned the crew, there were also questions about the safety of the ship. Why did such a large ship sink so rapidly? One crew member, a deckhand named Jim Hansen, described how quickly the ship filled with water.
Yeah, a real loud bang, and I woke up, and I thought, this is a really bad dream, I thought. And then I realized that it wasn't. I'd put my shirt on, so I'm looking down, and there's maybe a foot of water in my cabin. And then the second bang, the bulkhead caved in, and now I'm waist deep, and by the time I got out, I was chest deep. So, yeah, and that was quick. I moved pretty quick. I think another minute I wouldn't have made it.
BC's ferries do operate in very dangerous waters. There are 35 of them, and they must wend their way through a maze of islands every day. But there have been a number of accidents, and in the days after the sinking, there were questions about the ferry company's commitment to safety. Here's the CBC's Daryl McIntyre with more on that story.
It was the most spectacular crash in BC Ferry's recent history. Captured on amateur video, the 7,000-ton Queen of Oak Bay suffered a steering failure and slammed into a busy marina.
As I look up at the gangplank, all the BC Ferry workers are there, and they're saying, "Run!"